New York, Fifth Avenue, early 1880s. Carriages roll slowly down the Grand Boulevard as workers haul exquisite furniture into a magnificent new mansion. All of New York is whispering about this house. Behind it stands a family that believes money can buy anything, even a coveted place in the city's highest society. Their name is Vanderbilt. But there is a problem. In this world, it is not wealth that opens doors. It is one woman. Her name is Mrs. Astor. For years, Caroline Astor has reigned as the unchallenged queen of New York's elite. She alone decides who belongs and who remains forever on the outside. Yet this time, everything is different, because Alva Vanderbilt has no intention of being rejected. A fierce power struggle is about to begin, one that will not only reshape New York's high society, but even lead to the creation of one of the most legendary hotels in the world. So how did Caroline Astor become the most powerful woman in New York? Caroline Webster Schermerhorn was born in 1830 into one of the city's oldest and most respected families. Her ancestors had moved in the highest social circles for generations. Money mattered, of course, but lineage, tradition, and a flawless family name mattered even more. From childhood, Caroline was immersed in a world where rank and etiquette ruled supreme. On extended trips to Europe, she fell in love with royal courts, aristocratic customs, and rigid social hierarchies. It was there that she crafted her vision of a perfect society, a world in which everyone knew their place and kept it. When the time came to find a suitable husband, her mother set her sights on William Backhouse Astor Jr. The Astor family was staggeringly wealthy. Yet in the eyes of Caroline's family, they carried a critical flaw. They were new money. Their fortune was freshly made, not inherited over generations. The marriage instantly turned Caroline into one of the richest women in New York. But riches did not bring her happiness. While she devoted herself to her home and children, her husband lived a dissolute life of heavy drinking, countless affairs, and humiliating scenes that disrupted even her most carefully arranged dinner parties. For Caroline, it was a profound and constant humiliation. Instead of breaking under the weight of her husband's scandals, Caroline retreated into a world she could control. She began hosting lavish social evenings where she, and only she, decided who was worthy of an invitation. No one yet suspected that these elegant gatherings would soon become the most powerful stage in all of New York high society. Mrs. Astor rules New York, the famous 400, and the rules of high society. The city was changing fast. After the Civil War, enormous new fortunes exploded onto the scene. Railroad magnates, steel barons, and department store kings poured into New York, all desperate not only to be rich, but to be accepted into the highest ranks of society. But for Caroline, one rule remained absolute. Money alone was never enough. One of the first to openly challenge that rule was A.T. Stewart, a department store tycoon and one of the wealthiest self-made men in America. When Stewart built a splendid mansion diagonally across from her on Fifth Avenue, Caroline refused for years to acknowledge him or his wife. She once said mockingly, "Just because I buy my carpets from him doesn't mean I have to invite him into my house to walk on them." The message was clear. Mrs. Astor would defend her world against all newcomers. During this time, she met Ward McAllister, a self-styled authority on high society who shared her reverence for European aristocratic etiquette. He became her closest advisor. Together, they founded the Society of Patriarchs, an ultra-exclusive circle of New York's most distinguished old families. From that moment on, they jointly decided who could enter the social elite. Caroline's receptions soon became the most exclusive events in the city. It was McAllister who later coined the famous phrase, the 400, the exact number of people who, in his view, truly mattered in New York. A single invitation to one of Mrs. Astor's balls could seal a family's social fate forever. Just before midnight, carriages would line up outside her Fifth Avenue mansion. Ladies draped in sumptuous Parisian gowns and gentlemen in crisp tailcoats stepped into halls overflowing with thousands of roses. Chandeliers bathed the rooms in golden light while two orchestras played without pause until the early hours. At the center of this glittering spectacle stood Mrs. Astor herself. Diamonds blazed at her throat, ears, wrists, fingers, and even in her hair. Contemporary observers wrote that with her countless precious stones, Caroline looked like a walking chandelier. Every guest had to pass by her, and often her first glance was enough to decide whether the gates of high society would swing open or remain forever shut. But while Mrs. Astor believed her world was firmly in her grip, her most formidable challenger was preparing to step onto the stage. Her name was Alva Vanderbilt. Alva Vanderbilt challenges Mrs. Astor, the legendary costume ball that changed everything. Alva Vanderbilt refused to be excluded. Together with her husband William, she belonged to one of the wealthiest families in America. Money was no obstacle. Yet Caroline had denied her entry into the inner circle of New York society. Alva resolved to beat the old guard at their own game. On Fifth Avenue, she built a breathtaking French Renaissance-style chateau. To inaugurate it, she planned a costume ball unlike anything New York had ever seen. Around 1,000 invitations were prepared. Weeks beforehand, she strategically leaked details to the press, and soon the entire city was consumed by talk of the upcoming spectacle. Everyone desperately wanted to attend. But one name was conspicuously missing from the guest list: Mrs. Astor. Caroline's youngest daughter, Carrie, begged her mother to settle the feud. She could not bear to miss the social event of the year. Under mounting pressure, Caroline finally had no choice. She paid a personal visit to Alva Vanderbilt. Only then did the coveted invitation arrive. The ball was a sensation. Guests swept through the Vanderbilt mansion in awe. For weeks, New York had talked of nothing else, and now the reality surpassed every expectation. Sumptuous costumes, dazzling jewels, and brilliant lights turned the evening into a spectacle the city had never witnessed. Oysters, caviar, delicate roasted birds, and the celebrated delicacy of turtle soup were served on gilded plates. Champagne flowed endlessly. Yet all of this was eclipsed by one breathtaking moment. Alva's sister-in-law Alice Vanderbilt appeared in a gown that incorporated a genuine technological marvel, electric light. The dress actually glowed, and it became the sensation of the entire night. Mrs. Astor had to concede that she had lost this power struggle. From that evening on, the Vanderbilts were firmly entrenched in the highest echelons of New York society. The bitter rivals would later even become allies, joining forces to help fund the pedestal for the Statue of Liberty. The birth of the Waldorf Astoria, how a family feud created a legendary hotel. Though the battle with Alva was over, New York continued to transform, and change soon arrived at Caroline's very doorstep. Her nephew, William Waldorf Astor, having inherited his father's fortune, erected a massive luxury hotel directly next to her mansion. To Caroline, it was a deliberate provocation. She eventually abandoned her beloved home. Shortly afterwards, her own son, John Jacob Astor IV, retaliated by building the Astoria Hotel right beside it. The two hotels were later connected, and thus the legendary Waldorf Astoria was born, rising on the very spot where Caroline had once reigned supreme over New York society. The Queen's decline, scandals, personal tragedies, and the end of her influence. Now, the greatest blows came not from the nouveau riche, but from within her own shrinking world. The first betrayal struck from an unexpected quarter. Ward McAllister, her most trusted confidant, published a tell-all book exposing the inner workings of high society. The book caused a monumental scandal, and McAllister himself was instantly ostracized. Shortly after, Caroline endured another devastating loss. In 1892, her husband died. Only a year later, her daughter Helen passed away at just 37. For Caroline, it felt as though her entire world was collapsing. She withdrew completely from public life for 3 long years. When she finally reemerged, nothing was the same. Her daughter Charlotte had become entangled in a scandalous affair. The story made headlines across New York. Charlotte's husband challenged the lover to a duel and then divorced her. For Caroline, the irony must have been excruciating. For decades, she had mercilessly excluded others for far lesser infractions. Now her own family was at the center of every gossip column. Yet she stood by her daughter. Charlotte continued to appear at her mother's gatherings as if nothing had happened. The end of an era, her final ball, illness, and Caroline Astor's legacy. In 1905, Caroline hosted her last great ball. Just days later, She slipped on the marble staircase of her home and struck her head. Over the following months, her health steadily declined. A series of strokes and progressive dementia slowly dimmed the force that had once held New York in thrall. A few weeks before the end, she granted her first-ever newspaper interview. She said that other women would one day take her place, and she hoped only that she had left something valuable behind for society: good manners, discipline, and decency. Shortly afterwards, Caroline Astor died at the age of 78. The Titanic connection, John Jacob Astor IV, and the tragic fate of the Astor family. But the Astor story did not end there. Her only son, John Jacob Astor IV, made headlines once again a few years later. After Caroline's death, he ended his unhappy first marriage and wed 18-year-old Madeline Force, causing yet another public scandal. The newlyweds spent an extended honeymoon traveling through Europe and Egypt. For their return voyage, they booked passage on a magnificent new luxury liner. Its name was Titanic. When the ship struck an iceberg on the night of April 14, 1912, John Jacob managed to guide his pregnant wife into a lifeboat. He told her they would meet again in the morning. That morning never came. John Jacob Astor IV was among the more than 1,500 souls who perished in the sinking. Caroline Astor was the woman who shaped New York's Gilded Age like almost no other. For decades, she alone determined who belonged and who was shut out. With her passing, not only did the life of an extraordinary woman end, but so too did the old New York she had fought so fiercely to preserve. To this day, Caroline Astor is remembered as the undisputed queen of New York's golden age.